fucking M. GM, trade of the day. So today, I'm going to do something different. I'm going to focus a lot more on the Bitcoin charts. I'm going to look through some past charts as well to give you an idea of how altcoins strengthen against Bitcoin throughout a cycle. Because particularly, I'm obviously interested in Akash for obvious reasons. But I want to show a few different coins. So put the 200-day on, put the Michaels bands on, and we'll go on the weekly charts. And what you want to look at here is basically this path I've drawn, which I think AKT can follow, which would be a pullback against Bitcoin, right? This isn't the US dollar chart, this is the Bitcoin chart. So if AKT were to pull back, I'll just show it. Let's go ETH BTC. It's the most obvious one. So ETH BTC in its bear market coming into bull, right? The bands go green and it flips and it holds above the 200-day, which is the blue line, and it holds above the bands. The weekly bands stay green almost all the way. So it makes highs and lows, but the higher highs and higher lows all the way. Yeah. Eventually then moves into its final push all the way up. And that whole thing, like ETH outperformed Bitcoin on balance for December 19 until May 2021. So about 18 months. I guess you could say it extended to October, so you could call it 2 years, right? That's important because it's very, 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 very rare, almost impossible for an altcoin to outperform Bitcoin for more than that. I don't actually know an altcoin that has outperformed Bitcoin for more than 2 years consecutively. BNB didn't, right? BNB, I mean, I guess, would you class? I wouldn't class that because there's like a 90% drawdown in between. So no, BNB bottomed out in January 21, peaked in November 22. So it's all of 21, almost all of 22. They're like, that's like the closest you can get. So the point is, you go to Link. Chainlink had a long period of good performance against Bitcoin. July 18 until August 2020. So that's July 18, July 19, July 20, August 20. So there's 2 years and 1 month Link outperformed Bitcoin. So I think you're seeing the pattern, right? Nothing really will outperform Bitcoin for more than 2 years. Most stuff will be lucky to outperform Bitcoin for a few months towards the end of a bull market, which I'll show, let's say like AVAX as an example, because it did well last cycle, but obviously didn't outperform Bitcoin for any extended period. AVAX went from January 21 until December 21. So 1 year. AVAX had 1 year of outperformance, then done. So that matters because as we go back to the AKT chart, you can see this. So here's where we're at. We are from the bottom, currently 38 bars. So 38 weeks, 266 days. What's that? About 9 months? We're about 9 months in. 8-9 months. So you've probably got the same again. 8 or 9 months. And maybe as much as 2 years, which would be about 14 months. Right? But let's just err on the side of caution that you'll get 18 months of outperformance. That would be about what? 360, 460, 540, 540 days, which is about, there we go, 78 weeks, which would take us until the end of this year, right? It would be from the middle of 23 to the end of 2024. And there's the rough path I've drawn based on a parabolic slope. So everything in crypto tends to move on parabolas in a bull market. At a certain point, things will rise up, higher highs, higher lows, then eventually it will accelerate into a blow off top, and then that's it. So, as we see here, I can see Akash pulling back against Bitcoin. Doesn't matter what really happens to the dollar. I'm sure if AKT Bitcoin chart pulls back towards the bands or pulls back towards the 200-day and into this kind of rising slope, and you can even draw a trend line across these levels here, right? If it pulls back anywhere into that area to maintain this upward slope, to put in a higher low, it's going to probably be because the dollar value goes down, right? But it could also be that Bitcoin has a big run to all-time high and Akash just goes sideways. That's like the ideal scenario. If Akash went traded between $2.40 and $2.90, but Bitcoin went to 50, 60K, that would also pull this chart way down. That would be like perfect, but nothing really happens perfectly in crypto. So also be mindful that, let's say Bitcoin pulled back to 35K, Akash could pull back to $2 or 180. That would also nuke this chart. It's all relative. So for me, right now, my weighting of Akash to Bitcoin is perfect. It's just what I want. I have like maybe out of my cycle bags, not my trading account, my spot holdings, I've got anywhere between 15 and 20% in AKT. Right? It fluctuates based on obviously the price movements, but anywhere between 15 and 20%. And then the rest is in mostly Bitcoin at the moment, a little bit of Solana, and then some ETH that's locked up, but still mostly Bitcoin, probably 50%, or sorry, if 20% is AKT, probably about 65-70% Bitcoin. I would be willing to increase or decrease those holdings based on this chart. And so look at a few here, a few previous cycle charts. If you look at Aave, you can see how these outperformers move against Bitcoin, right? They trend up, they hold the weekly bands never go red, but the price does go below the weekly bands at times. And on this relative strength chart, if price goes below the weekly bands and towards the 200-day on the Bitcoin pair, that's usually a signal that it's oversold versus Bitcoin. Remember, the goal here this year is not to worry about US dollars. My goal is I'm holding Bitcoin unless I want to hold something that I think will go up more than Bitcoin. Therefore, I'll swap some Bitcoin into that coin. US dollars don't come into it. US dollars matter, longer term. But if I think the whole market's rising, the US dollar value will take care of itself. This is more about which is going to outperform, Bitcoin or the altcoin. So if this is expensive, then that's cheap in a very basic sense, right? You don't want to be swapping a bunch of Bitcoin into Aave when it's like parabolic straight up. And then when it overcorrects, goes below the weekly, goes below the 200-day, if you're still bullish on Aave, or even here on the second retest, that's the time to be swapping it back in. It's the same as your Bitcoin dominance charts, same as like your total 3 versus the total cap, right? Whenever altcoins are significantly outperforming Bitcoin, that's not a time to be swapping a load of Bitcoin into alts. Because we know that alts are very volatile and they will overcorrect, and you'll get a point where they'll pull back significantly. Did Link. Did it do Link? I showed Link on the time side, but Link's actually got a really nice chart here. Similar actually in terms of its shape to AKT. And I've been following the Link path for AKT all year. All since last year. You've heard me talk about it a lot. And it's really served well. A lot of similarities, especially this pop up here, break up here, pull back into the bands, into 200, moving up. AKT made a new high. Link didn't. I don't know if it's going to move this. It's not going to follow that exact path. But what I do see is that Chainlink was one of the biggest outperformers in the last bear going into the last bull, and there was heavy accumulation by smart money with Chainlink, because Chainlink was like the big breakout project, right? I do think that's happening to Akash. I do think there's big accumulation going on. I do see signs of it. It's quite clear to me on the chart and even on the volume analysis across all the exchanges. There aren't enough AKT. There's a shortage of the tokens. A lot of them are staked, a lot of them are locked up, and they aren't on major exchanges yet. So it doesn't take much to move the price up or down, but that means that in a bull market it doesn't take much to move it up, right? Because people are trying to accumulate. I think there's going to be some big funds big buyers announcing that they own AKT whenever the time is right. I think that accumulation is going on now. We do not know who owns it yet. We will know very soon. I suspect Grayscale might open a trust. They're definitely going to open a trust for AI, whether it's a basket like they've done with some other ones, where they don't just put one in, they put a bunch in. That probably is going to happen. Or if they just open a straight AKT trust, maybe. I do know that Foundry, which is ran by the Grayscale team, that used to be ETH miners, are now using AKT and using the GPU power and renting it. So basically, the DCG team are active in the AKT ecosystem, or on the AKT chain, on the Akash chain. So seems a bit obvious what's going to happen next. There's going to be some kind of grayscale involvement. To me, that would seem pretty simple. And then outside of that, you've got, it's a sleeper. People are still sleeping on this, which is wild. But the point is, right here, right now, against the dollar, AKT looks great. Against Bitcoin, it looks great. This is consolidation. This is tight. And if this breaks higher, I would fully expect a bigger move up. But if it just sort of peters out and weakens off, don't be surprised if it drops down. And it can go below the bands. And it does go below the weekly bands multiple times in a bull market against Bitcoin. So to me, that's also not a bad thing. That's an opportunity to buy. But if this kind of inside week after inside week and consolidation, if that breaks to the upside, I would expect a sharp move up, then a drop back, and then more of the same. So you can go in either direction here. If, funny enough, like if we pump higher off this, if AKT has a big push against Bitcoin in the next few weeks, I'll actually consider swapping a bit back to Bitcoin, because I would consider that to be short-term overbought, I should say, and that we could see some mean reversion back down. But if we get the dip down first, I'll just be loading up more AKT. So there's a couple of paths. Quick AKT update, haven't done one in a while. Good coin, best AI coin in my opinion. BitTensor is also quite good, but it's quite heavily shilled and the chart is in need of a pullback. And we'll see what other projects come out soon. That's it. GM.